I'm a nonfiction kind of guy.
Yeah, me too.
This right here, this was so huge for me. I've spent the last few days reading it,
Really?
and I got to tell you, there's so many life principles in here. I had so much. I become so overwhelmed with this book. I had to get up and leave. I went and got a pad and paper because it affected me in ways that, and I think you and I have a similar story. I knew since I was probably 15 exactly what I want to do. I had it lined up.
Yeah.
I take that back. I had two. I either wanted to be a helicopter pilot or I wanted to be a state trooper.
Okay.
And I narrowed it to those two things. And I realized real early in the military
Right.
that helicopter pilot wasn't an option because of the vertigo thing,
Okay. Okay.
and which was fine
Yeah.
because I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And this pivot, I like to refer to this as life principles.
Absolutely.
Because I wish 30 years ago I'd read this book.
Wow,
I
that
guess
means
you
a lot
hadn't
to
read
me.
it. Yeah, this was very impactful.
So you live in Spring Hill, Inverness?
Yeah. Well, I originally I'm from the Northwest Florida, the Panhandle.
Okay.
I went on the Highway Patrol 35 years ago, back in '86,
Okay.
and I went through their academy, and some of your stories resonated with me, like your Chris Winkie went on your show. We used to go by Doak Campbell Stadium. We'd run by there every day, and I was a big Seminole fan, big Chris Winkie fan.
Yeah. He's a guy that if the injury didn't happen to Dan Kindredge, we may never have seen him win the Heisman. It's funny how one thing can change somebody's life. It really, I haven't talked to him in many years, but he's just the kind of guy, the kind of friend when you see someone, you pick it up right where you left off, and he's that guy. I think he's still the quarterbacks coach at Georgia Tech right now.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, he just because of fate, he actually pivoted into quarterback because he wasn't even sure he was going to get to play.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So your story, I think we have two different stories, but I think they intersect in a way. When you was a very young man, you knew exactly what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I did. I really did. But I teach now, and I'm sure you can speak on this too in different ways, but the teaching to me is more fulfilling, but it wouldn't be if I hadn't have done the broadcasting, because part of the teaching is talking about, relating my experiences to what they're learning. And I think students like professors who have experience. I know when I went to Florida, there was a lot of negativity in the journalism school, which is a very reputable journalism school. But frankly, a lot of the professors were career academias, and they were the most negative. The ones that we gravitated to were the ones who actually had experience. So it was a funny dynamic.
So what would you? I mean, it's weird for me to say this, but the pivot part I don't think came with me until I retired from my career.
That's normal.
And it was, you do something for 30 years, and I did not realize it, and I've seen this happen to a lot of guys. You leave, you retire.
Right.
But you don't retire to anything. And then you realize, and my wife told me, she said, you've got to make your future bigger than your past.
I like that.
And at that time, my past was my future. I just didn't realize it.
Right.
So that was my first pivot.
But you're dead on, because the premise of the book is pivoting, but it's what you just said. It's taking the skills that we've acquired that we take for granted. We take a lot of skills, and we all have them too. But think about the skills that you have and how you've built off of those skills. I know I've done it, and it sounds like you have too.
I think for me, my takeaway, my thought process when I read your book, I think the biggest problem that I experienced and people I know have experienced with the pivot,
Right.
which is crucial, but it's lack of clarity. And it's like that famous sentence, what do you want? And most people have a hard time answering that question.
Absolutely. Especially, you know what? It's not discriminatory towards age either. In terms of law enforcement, What is the normal retirement age? Is it right around 50? Is it 40s? What is it?
Well, it's considered high risk, and because of that stress of high
Yeah.
risk, you can retire after 25 years.
Okay.
But most guys that I know retire between the age of 50 and 60,
Okay.
and most of them stay too long
Okay.
because you're essentially, it's a brotherhood like you don't see. And it's like leaving the world's largest fraternity,
Yeah.
and you have this, it's kind of like family. But that's changing like everything else. But yeah, and what happens, I have seen this with a lot of my friends. They retire and they do nothing.
Yeah.
Their health deteriorates, and it's just their life, like I guess like my wife said, you have to make your future bigger than your past. You have to have a purpose. You have to have a reason to get up. And I think law enforcement has a very difficult time trying to find a new purpose.
Yeah.
It's like me here. Me being in this podcast is not supposed to happen. This is a pivot. When she came to me and asked me if I wanted to do podcast, she started this Beyond the Badge. And I said, absolutely not. No. But the growth from it, from talking to people like you, and the information that other people may hear that could change their life, that's my why. There's my purpose.
Right. You're not alone though. I think a lot of it's fear. We could talk about that. There's people get nervous in different ways. They show nerves in different ways. They have fear for different reasons, and I think it's healthy to talk about that.
I think your book, the one word that kept coming back to me in your book when I read it was the word clarity. You got to get clear on what you want, because your purpose, that why am I doing this? Most people can't answer that. Why am I doing this? And that's the engine, I think, that drives you.
Right.
So, I mean, it's basically focus. And then from there, you've got the, and it was in your book too, the mental acuity or the toughness, just to have the mindset.
Absolutely.
But your turning point, you had a turning point.
It was when I turned
You had
50.
to pivot.
Yeah, it was when I turned 50, absolutely. And I enjoyed sportscasting a great deal. But everything changed when I turned 50 for some reason. I didn't care about turning 30 and 40. I think I was in the heart of my work, much like, law enforcement. 30 and 40, you're in the heart of what you're doing. But 50, I just thought, I didn't know if I'd like teaching. I never thought I would write a book. And I never thought I would speak. And I think once you make a pivot and once you use those skills, then you can build on all of it, and you kind of get adrenaline flowing after a while. You're thinking, well, I never thought I'd be doing this at all. So you keep going with that. But I went back and got my master's degree, and there were times early on where I'm driving home and I'm taking night classes because I'm still working. I'm still covering the Saints, and I still have my production company. And I just thought, is this a waste of my time? Is this too much money? What am I doing? And you're going to often feel that way. I'm sure when you started the podcast, what am I doing? This is not who I am. This is not what I want to do. All these emotions are very normal. And I felt them.
So we've all experienced it. I have. When you get to that point, you want to quit. And I'm sure you've been there. That was your turning point, was, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is a waste of time. And you make that pivot. What is some advice you could give someone from what you've been through, especially in law enforcement?
Well, I think law enforcement is a perfect example because of the retirement age. And yes, you have a pension, but you have a life you have to live. And of course, you want to be around your family or whatever your situation is. You want to play golf, maybe you want to take vacations, you want to have all these bucket list items. But I think clarity is a good word. You can't pivot without a purpose. You have to have a goal in place, because if you don't, then you may be lost and you may get frustrated a little more easily. And I think if you do have a plan and a purpose, it's not going to be easy all the time, but you're continually making steps forward where you can see the goal get closer and closer. And there's no better feeling than that, because you're putting in work and it's paying off. That's why you got to have a purpose, because the work you put in has to pay off. The school was tough, but after the first semester, I thought, you know what? I only have a year and a half of this. left. I can do this. I can do this moving forward. So just have a purpose, have a plan, and know it's not going to be easy, but also give yourself a lot of credit for making progress.
So basically, the tough part of that is reinventing yourself. You have to first accept there is another self. And what, as far as in law enforcement, like, hey, look, that's their whole life.
Yes.
What tip for would someone said, look, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to sit in my rocking chair and I'm going to maybe golf once a week.
Well, I'll give a lot of credit to my father, my late father, who loved what he did for a living. He was an attorney and he practiced all the way till the end. I think when you look at law enforcement per se, I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be anything but a sportscaster. Just like maybe your friends and who's listening to this podcast, you wanted to be in law enforcement your whole life and that's it. And you know what? That's okay. But this book aims to help people like you realize that there's so much more for you. If you're listening to this podcast right now, write down, and this may take some time, just do some self-evaluation here. Write down 5 skills that you have that you can use beyond law enforcement. And then once you do that, take those 5 things that you've written down and think, how can I take these skills and not just apply them to anything? Maybe not even to make money, because the money will come when you're good at anything. The money will come. But how can I take those 5 skills and do something I'm going to enjoy just as much as law enforcement, or maybe even more? I mean, you know, Scott, when I speak, I tell the audience all the time, I'm not here just for people who hate their jobs or who lack passion at their jobs. I'm here to talk to people who actually love their jobs. You could love being a law enforcement officer, but maybe you want more with your life. And that's what happened to me at 50. I love covering sports. It was hard getting my master's. And then I got a job. And then the more I taught, the more I liked it. And then I'm starting to speak more. And then I wrote 2 books. It's adrenaline. It's really a carryover. So write down 5 things and then really think long and hard about how can I use these skills that I have taken for granted to do something that will possibly make me happier than being in law enforcement.
I think that what you just said is so huge because most probably don't write down. And I can tell you the guys I know, they do have some very strong attributes they could take with them.
Yeah.
I'm going to, yes, that's a great idea, the right 5 things. I've never done that. I'm assuming when you had to pivot, did you do that? And what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I mean, when I teach now, I probably didn't do it initially. That's why I give you advice to do it. Looking back, I just jumped right into getting my master's. And here's the funny thing. I speak now. You know what's the best practice for speaking publicly? Because TV's is different. You're looking into a camera. You're not looking into people's eyes. You're just looking into a camera. It's less personal. The best practice for speaking is teaching, because I look into the eyes of students 3 days a week, and it's reps. So whatever you do, taking those 5 skills, you have to get reps. And my repetition is teaching. And that has made me a better speaker. I'm not where I am or where I want to be quite yet, but I've done a lot of keynotes recently speaking to an engineering company about pivoting. And their hierarchy obviously doesn't want them to quit their jobs and pivot to a new career. My message was, how can you be better at your job now internally? How can you take on a different project? How can you maybe work hard and elevate yourself within this company? There's all different layers to pivoting. So no, I didn't write the 5 things down, but looking back, I should have. And that's why making the journey, I want to help you have a smoother pivot than I did.
And you know, it's funny because what you're saying is right in line with a lot of law enforcement officers deal with, because that pivot for them happens between the age of 50 and 60, if they do it.
Yeah.
So was that true for you? I mean, your first pivot?
Yeah, I mean, once I finished my master's degree, and frankly, I wrote a thesis to finish my master's degree, and all master's degrees are different, but I had to write a thesis. And Scott, that thesis took part of my soul out of me. It was very hard to write that thesis, but I can't tell you how liberating it was. And I was still covering the New Orleans Saints then. And I did a show with Drew Brees, and there's a long story about how Brees and I's relationship started. but I was the only person to interview him after every game as a New Orleans Saint, and we did it for 14 years. So after I wrote that thesis, I thought, you know what? Right when Brees retired a year later, I need to write a book about this because nobody else has the content that I have. And so that was another nerve-wracking, I don't know if I can do this type thing. And you're going to have a lot of nerve-wracking, I don't know if I can do this type things, even though you write down the 5 things. But I'm here to tell you, writing that book led to this book, and this is the book I wanted to write all along. But you're going to have a lot of things along your pivotal journey, per se, that will surprise you and that will really give you the kind of confidence, not that you're not confident, but more confidence that you can do things that you never, ever thought you could do. And that's such a liberating feeling.
What inspired you? And that, by the way, the Drew Brees story is fascinating to me. I mean, I remember, I don't remember, he was in a playoff game.
Yeah.
I can't remember who he was playing, but he went back in the pocket to make a pass. I lost him. I thought he was sacked. I thought he was down. He made it. You had all these big guys surrounding him, and he was nowhere to be seen. And he worked his way out and threw a touchdown pass to Marcus Colston.
Oh, yeah.
How I remember that, I don't know. But I'm looking at this guy's eyes after the play. He was undersized. Yeah. The expectations, it took him a long time. That had to be the inspiration because this guy's a winner. I mean, you could just see it in his eyes. Was that the inspiration that made you want to write that book?
Yeah, I just thought it was a unique story. I think we all have unique experiences, and the fact that he and I had that kind of relationship for so long, I knew I had content that nobody else had. And here's the thing, too. You need to look back at your life and think about maybe in 10 years from now. Or look back, but look forward to. Look forward to 10 years and say, I don't want to look back at my life and say, I could have done this, or I could have done that. When Brees retired, I thought, I don't want to look back and say, boy, I could have wrote that book, but I just, for whatever reason, didn't do it. You know, I could have got my master's degree, but 50 turned into 60, that turned into 65, and I don't want to look back at my life with regret. So put yourself in a position where you're not going to look back at your life with regret, and you're going to gain that confidence, and you're going to have that second life and second career. Again, it's self-fulfilling, and it's never easy, but it feels better and better the more steps you take forward, for sure.
Oh, I totally agree with that. That is basically your book. That's what it's about. Yes. And I have seen so many people who didn't move and at the end of your life have that much regret.
Yeah.
And the success story, like with Drew Brees.
Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway, learning from the way Brees got to where he got? I mean, what was your biggest experience from that?
I really appreciated his leadership a lot because I have a lot of respect for a lot of quarterbacks, but not all of them approach winning and losing the same. And I'm here to tell you, I covered St. Brees' whole career in New Orleans, and what really stood out for me, he was better in front of the media, and he was better to me after a loss than a win. I mean, he was better to me often after a loss than a record-breaking night. There was one game where he, broke an accuracy record, set another NFL record, and he was 29 of 30, and he was lamenting the one incompletion after that game, and that speaks to his perfection. But it also speaks to his leadership because he knew what he said would resonate with the team. Whatever he said, everybody would pay attention to. If he's going to be short with the media, it's going to reflect the culture of the team. So I always saw him really answer every question from me and from the media. He would usually meet with the media in a press conference, and then he would come to me and we would do our show together. And then during the pandemic, it was crazy because I did Zooms with him and holding up a computer at NFL Stadium so you could see the arena behind me. It was just a ton of different stories from Drew Brees. But the leadership of knowing what he said and what it meant to the team, but also his story too. I mean, it's not like he was a first-round pick. He wasn't a five-star recruit. He was never an NFL MVP, which is remarkable. But he is going into the Hall of Fame this year because of his perseverance, the belief in himself. But every success story, as you know, Scott, you have to get help. And I don't know if his career would have been the same if he would have gone to Miami and played with Nick Saban. The fact that he went to New Orleans because Miami didn't check him out, didn't clear his physical. He goes to New Orleans and he meets a guy by the name of Sean Payton. It was the perfect marriage. So in every story you need someone. I'll give you my someone. At my school where I teach, I have a dean who knows I don't have a PhD, I have a master's degree, but appreciates my experience, appreciates what I bring to the table. I will say I love TV, but often with all the cutbacks in the media, they make you feel that you're lucky to have those jobs. What I love about my job is they appreciate me and they make me feel like they're lucky to have me. And so that's the place you want to be. And I think that's part of why I love it. So yeah, there's a lot of layers to Breeze, but I think you need that one person in your life. And I tell my students that all the time. Whether you're making a pivot, whether you're starting in law enforcement, whatever stage in life, you need that one person who's going to make a difference. But it's not just one person. If you keep working hard and you keep creating options, you're going to have a series of ones. And that's the exciting part. I think we can all list a series of ones, one person in our life that has dramatically changed the direction. It could be a family member, it could be a significant other, it could be your coworker, it could be your boss, whomever. They've given you confidence or they've given you a break to create a whole new world for yourself.
Yeah, that's huge. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about those people in my life. They're there.
Yes.
I think how we do a disservice to us, I mean, we all pivot. Mm-hmm. I think we just sometimes we don't realize what we're pivoting to.
No, right.
We don't have that clarity on what we're going to do. And that's probably fear-based.
Yeah.
Because the fear of the unknown. And the only thing worse, I think, than not making that decision, I have found, is by doing nothing.
Yeah, fear is powerful. Let's discuss that because I feel like, no matter how we want to portray ourselves, we all get nervous. I like the example in the book, the singer Darius Rucker was asked, how often does he get nervous when he performs? And he said, every time I get nervous. I had a teacher tell me when I was first teaching, I was nervous. I wanted to be great at it. I think that's part of being nervous. That's part of being scared is we want to be great. We don't want to let people down. I'm sure a lot of law enforcement can relate to that. When they first started their careers, you're nervous. You want to be great. But I had a professor, and I asked them, that they'd been teaching for years. And I said, how often do you get nervous? And he said, every time I walk into the class. And that took a load off of me. So everybody's nervous, everybody's fearful, and everybody needs to realize that. And that has to make you feel normal. But we also need to realize, too, that we show nerves in different ways. I bring a lot of guest speakers into my classes, and I brought a reporter who covers the Saints, and he's cool, calm, collected. And he told my class that he gets nervous every day, and I was thinking, really? I'm listening to this? So we all get nervous, everybody. It's okay. It's okay. Just realize that.
So if you have someone, and we all face that.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone who, I guess that nervousness is what creates that fear.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone to overcome that nervousness?
I always equate it, this may sound silly, but I think we can all relate to it. Maybe we don't like this the same. It's like a roller coaster. You ride a roller coaster ride when you're young or whatever age, and you're nervous about it. Oh, this looks scary. I don't know if I want to do this. And then you ride it, and then the first feeling is, can I do it again? I want to do that again. That was fun. That's life. Is a lot of times, maybe it's not a roller coaster. We all don't like roller coasters. There's something in life we all can relate to. I don't know if I can do this, but then you do it and you want to do it again. The answer to your question is you have to just do it. But you have to...
You put in the reps. Is that right? Just
absolutely.
Put in the reps.
But you have to, again, write down the skills, but have a goal and put yourself in position to succeed. Because let's say you're nervous about it and it didn't end as perfect as you want. You have to take the positives from that and build off of it. And teaching is a great example. I'm a much better teacher than I was last year. I'm much better than I was 5 years ago. But it's funny, the graduating class at Florida Southern College where I teach, my first year, they were freshmen, now they're graduating. And some of my most loyal students were in my first classes, and I look back and I'm like, I can't believe they still want to hang out with me. I didn't think I was that good back then. And they still talk about the things that we did. I think when you start in anything and you're passionate about it, you really want to be good at it. And I think people see that. Whether it's law enforcement, teaching are very different, but you're working with people and they understand in your line of work, do they really care about what they're doing? That's transparent, right? I don't know whether it's the coworkers, whether it's the bosses, people you work with in the community. I think that's the common denominator that we can take in our two professions. But in terms of fighting that fear, you just got to go for it. And if you have a plan, I think it makes it easier to go for it.
I think your book, and I'm going to be sharing with a lot of law enforcement officers, a common theme that I see, they want to quit. They can retire, but they don't have a future. They want to leave,
Yeah.
but they really truly don't know what they want to do with their life after because they don't think they can replace it. So they get stressed from both sides.
And they need to know that's normal. And they also need to know they probably have people around them. Man, aren't you glad you're retiring? You get to play golf or you get to travel. And maybe that's good for a couple months. But as you have stated and as you have experienced, for those who are passionate about what they do for a long time in law enforcement, you can't let go of that passion. You have to channel it and use your skills to be passionate about something else. And trust me, I never, ever, if you're listening to this podcast, I never, ever thought I would teach. Again, never thought I would write 2 books. Never thought I would speak. In fact, I was more comfortable speaking on television than in person. But it's so liberating to be doing something else. Go out and find something that's liberating for you. But know that it's normal to say, why, people around you, why don't you enjoy retirement? Well, maybe you will enjoy retirement by doing something where you'll find as much passion as you had in law enforcement. And maybe more.
This is amazing because you and I, 2 different paths, but we're basically living your book. Because I can assure you, I never saw this, me being here today. It wasn't even in my plan.
Right.
And I pivoted to it, but I had to find my why. Once I found my purpose, it made it easier. And I think what I see people struggling with is they will pivot, but they won't have a true purpose or why. You have to define that. And they keep going back.
Yeah, think about this, the 3 Ps and marketing, they're completely different. I created my own. Purpose, actually passion, purpose, pivot. You got to have passion for something. You got to have a purpose, and then you can make the pivot. That's what it's all about.
I love that. Yes. There had to be a moment in your life. You said, I'm done. I feel like quitting. I don't want to do anything else. Absolutely. How did you manage that for someone how did you make that decision or that pivot? What guided you to where you are now?
Just the small victories, writing the thesis in grad school and getting my first teaching job. And I was an adjunct professor, which means I wasn't full-time. And I remember walking in my first class and there was a 3-hour course. And I'm thinking, well, I'm prepared, but this will be a little different. I'm excited, but I'm really nervous. And I remember that first class went so well, they gave me another class, and it was the next semester, and that went well. It's small victories. And then writing the Breeze book, I thought, wow, I remember we had book signings in New Orleans and all over Louisiana and Pensacola. I just thought, I want everybody to feel like I did. I never thought I would be here. I never thought I'd be doing these things. I want you to experience life where you never thought you would be doing blank or blank or blank. I can fill in 3 blanks now: teaching, writing, and speaking. Give yourself something to look forward to. I think that's what we all need, especially when you're retiring in law enforcement. Everybody in life, and I tell my 2 daughters this, no matter how stressful life gets or no matter where you are in life, you should always give yourself something to look forward to. Why not give yourself a whole second life to look forward to? Wouldn't that be great?
You gave me a gold nugget, and I'm going to give you credit for it, but I'm going to start talking to these guys, and that writing down 5 things that you're really good at, I think is huge if a lot of people just do that.
I think we just take ourselves for granted. We know things we can do well, but maybe we forget about some things, or we feel like there's some attributes that we have we can only use with law enforcement. I felt that way in TV. All I can do is TV. That's all. That's all I'm capable of. But I produce my lectures just like I used to produce my sportscasts. Think about things that you did in law enforcement that you can translate to different careers. Maybe that's something you've never thought about. You had that retirement date and you've been thinking about it, and boy, that is normal and that is okay. But think about now things that you've done in law enforcement that you can use to do in other careers that possibly could make you just as happy or happier. And that's a fun thought. And when you have that passion and when you have that purpose, and then you take that pivot, I think that is, I would love to hear the success stories from people. I have examples in my book of different sportscasters who have pivoted to different careers. One is a chef and does farmers markets in Orlando. One is a personal trainer. One started his own auctioneering company. One's in real estate. One's in the financial world. And if I had them all in this conversation now, Scott, I'm telling you, they would say they're happier. And they love being sportscasters, but they're happier doing other things. For those of you who were in law enforcement for many years, trust me, you can do the same. You can.
Oh, that's great. Now when I told you before, I had to leave your book. Amazing book. I love this book, but I started making notes because these life principles. Here's my takeaway. I broke it down. Some of these I knew, some of these I wish I had heard this years earlier, but it's never too late. But number one, you have to stay committed to the mission.
Yep. Absolutely.
You have never quit in an emotional state, and we all get in emotional states.
Right.
So you can't let the emotions, you got to go more of the heart.
Yeah.
Now, the one that I got from the book, and I had a hard time with this one, pivot early, not late. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think you can actually pivot at any point. But you don't want to wait too late is the key. You don't want to look back and say, as we mentioned earlier, you don't want to look back and say, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that. And that's any age. I mean, there's a lot of people who want to be sportscasters, or maybe they want to go in law enforcement, and they're not committed to it in their 20s. And all of a sudden they're in their 30s and they don't have a game plan. Or you could be in law enforcement from your early 20s and you retire in your 50s or 60s, whatever it is. Then you have another game plan and you wait 5 years and you wait 10 years. And all of a sudden the 10 years have passed you by. That's why I attack the pivot early, no matter how young or old you are.
Now, this one here, this hit me strong because I've actually done it. I didn't realize at the time, but seek outside perspective.
Absolutely. Yes.
And you have met a lot of great people.
It goes back to the ones. I mean, you can never do it by yourself. I had a great supportive family. I would never have been a sportscaster if my dad hadn't have guided me. I mean, I have stories in the book about how my first job potentially was in Nacogdoches, Texas. And I thought I was going to get that job. And they called me, we want to fly you in. And then a week later, they called me and they said, we brought media consultants in and they think you look too young. The funny thing about that story is 10 years later, I'm working for Fox Sports Net and I'm covering the NBA playoffs in Milwaukee. And I met the person who got the Nacogdoches job. And we become friends. So every birthday he says Happy Nacogdoches Day. And then I say Happy Nacogdoches Day. Relationships are everything. In law enforcement, you know that. There's so many layers of that for what you've done. But I bring in a lot of guest speakers, as I've mentioned. And Mark Zumoff, who was the longtime play-by-play announcer for the Philadelphia 76ers, he wrote the textbook that I use in my sports media class. And I asked him in front of my students, I said, what's the key to getting started? Obviously you got to intern and you got to develop skills. And I thought he said something interesting that goes along with your point. You have to always lean on your inner circle, because what's your inner circle going to do? Whether it's your wife, it's your girlfriend, it's your family, your best friends, you know what they're going to do? They're going to be honest with you. They're going to say, I know you're good at this. They're going to look at the 5 things you wrote down. I know you're good at these things. Or maybe, you know what? I don't know if you're good at that, but you're good at that. You have to listen to those who love you the most. that's kind of the takeaway from what you were saying. Yeah.
How about this one? Pressure. I guess we could replace that word pressure with fear.
Yeah.
But pressure or fear will reveal the direction you need to go into.
Yeah, there's a chapter in the book about do something you're scared of. And I can't tell you, and I'm sure, my goodness, in your line of work, there are so many moments where we could sit down and talk to some of your best friends who've served in law enforcement, where there's different levels of fear for what you do for a living. And the things I talk about are pale in comparison to the experience that you and your brethren have had. But I just look back at moments where I put myself out there. I remember I got a job at the Tampa Bay Lightning, and all of a sudden I'm hosting a pregame show, and I'd seen one NHL game in my life before that. And I'm thinking, okay, it's like law enforcement. You get the big promotion. This is what you've been waiting on. Now it's time to deliver because you put in the work. Same as me working for the Lightning. Okay, I'm nervous, but this is what I've been waiting on. This is the break I needed. It's time to deliver. But there's a fear and there's a set of nerves that go with that. And I could give you other examples in TV, but I know those listening who are in law enforcement, think about the times that you fought that fear and you overcame it. What'd you feel? You felt confidence. You gained confidence from it. And that's what pivoting will do for you. Once you're retired, you're going to have fear again. But what's going to happen when you make that step forward, it's going to give you a ton of confidence.
What moment did you have the most fear, and how did you overcome it?
Ooh, a lot of times. The Lightning, I remember doing my first sideline game with the New Orleans Saints and Archie Manning and Tim Brando, who was a longtime ESPN broadcaster. I'm driving them to the game, and I'm excited about it, but I'm like, I don't want to let those guys down. I'll tell you a recent example. I had, relationships are just such a key to life. You got to be good to people, and you got to be good to people anyway. That's why you're a good person. But it's amazing when you're good to people how it comes back to you in so many ways. I mentioned the first class I ever taught and how nervous I was. I had a student in that class reach out to me in the fall. And he worked for a company, and I haven't talked to him in 4 years. And he said, we just had a meeting, and we need a keynote speaker. And I thought of you. And I just was shocked. I'm surprised he remembered me. And I did a keynote, and it was a room full of the hierarchy, but I'm looking at a TV, and it's 400 people around the country, but sitting next to me was that student who introduced me. And Scott, I didn't want to let him down, just like I didn't want to let Archie Manning down or Tim Brando down, because you take pride in your work. There's so many people that you work with in law enforcement, you take pride, you want to be great at what you do. So there's a pressure to that. There's a lot of moments, but those are the ones that stand out, especially that recently. I was so nervous about that. I prepared so hard for that, and it was so liberating when it was over. I spoke to a chamber recently, and I had all these notes. You go back to reps, and I was speaking, and I've done a lot of speaking in the last couple of years, and I started talking in the middle of it, and I realized I haven't even looked at my notes. And I walk away from the podium, and I just start talking to the audience. Whatever you decide to do, you will reach a point of confidence that's such a great feeling because you put the work in. You have made the pivot, you had a purpose, and you love it. And once you do that, it's empowering. It really is.
I think that's huge what you said. I was going to top it with that. Regardless of what you're doing, if you have passion doing it, I think there's always going to probably be fear, but I think the passion you have, your why, is the answer. Which goes to your whole book. Yeah. This whole book. And I wanted to ask you, I love this book. Where can people get this book?
Well, you got me so excited about meeting you and hearing about some of your friends. I'd love to come and just talk to them and bring the books, and maybe we could have an event. I've done some of that, but you can find it on Amazon, and there's different options. I will say this: I may do an audiobook, but I did the audiobook for the Breeze book. The Breeze book's called The Breeze Way. It's right here, and You know what's funny? I'll give you another thing that's interesting about life is asking people things. I asked people to endorse the book who I did not know. And one is Marshall Goldsmith, who's a 4-time New York Times bestselling author. One's Dory Clark, who's a Wall Street Journal bestselling author. Scott, I don't know them. I just reached out to them. When you make that pivot, no matter what you decide to do, reach out to people. This is what I tell my students all the time too. It's such a great world we live in with social media and LinkedIn and all these different elements. You have the power to do that. But my book is on Amazon and it's on MikeNabors.com, has all the information how you can purchase it through all the different, I have it on Venmo and Cash App, and I can send you an autographed copy, and the price there covers postage as well.
Oh, that's awesome. I will get with you later on that. And look, I got to wrap it up with this. At the end of the day, find your clarity of purpose, find your why, and get after it. Because the regret you would feel by not doing that is going to have a harder sting to it.
It's like if you guys have children, I think about it all the time. I always want to tell them I love them. I always wanted them to know how much I care about them, because you don't want to have any regret with that. Or maybe you've had and I don't want to get too emotional here, but you have a relationship with someone who you really care about. You mend that fence because you don't want to look back and regret not doing it. But I showed you the Breeze book. I mean, this is a labor of love for me. I know it's cliche, but I mean it. I didn't want to write a book until I lived it. I didn't want to speak about it until I lived it. I didn't want to speak about it till I had pitfalls and speed bumps along the way. I want to help people because I say this in my class, and I know we're closing up here, but I don't believe in Case of the Mondays. I don't believe in Hump Day, and I really don't believe in Thank God It's Friday. If you really like what you do, trust me, every day is not going to be great. We're going to have bosses and coworkers. We're going to have moments that irritate us. But I tell my class all the time, live in a TGIT world. Thank God it's today, where you look forward to things and you look forward to going to work. One of my prized possessions is a student gave me a keychain that said TGIT on it, and I look at it every time I get in my car or go in my house. Try to adopt the TGIT philosophy over the TGIF.
Gratefulness.
Yeah, absolutely.
This our podcast, Beyond the Badge, this book fits that so well. There's so many things in this book that could benefit so many people. But I was thinking during the podcast, this book would benefit anyone because we all have to pivot.
Right.
And it's great.
We may have pivoted in our lives and we don't even give ourselves credit for it. Different things within our jobs. I mean, when I spoke to a recent company, they don't want me talking to them about leaving that career because they want their employees to stay. It could be within a company, or if you're listening right now, just be happier within your career. Or you can take on a new career if you're in law enforcement. As you mentioned, there's all different layers to this. Absolutely.
Well, Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. This is some very good information, and I'm sure we will talk again soon.
I enjoyed it, Scott. Thanks for reaching out, and thanks for having me. And remember, don't quit, pivot.
Don't quit, pivot. I love it.